Hey, Western Slope. It's meteorologist Ian Kowalski back with another episode of Weather Eye. It was an intense weather week here in Western Colorado, too. I know we don't get to say that every single episode, but we've had, I think, pretty good luck as we've gotten into the spring, finally making up for our lack of rain, just how dry it's been. We've been talking about drought constantly, it feels like. But this week, we even got hail here in the Grand Valley. We got some thunderstorms earlier on this week. And what that meant is, yes, even in the middle of town here at the station, and especially down towards the Redlands, you really got some, very decent sized hail, a little bit bigger than pea size, I'd say, maybe towards that dime size. But that's getting too into the weeds of it. That's just how we measure hail, by just abstractly picking fun little round objects and saying, oh, that's about the size of a piece of hail. So if you want to know how meteorologists work, there's a little insight behind the scenes. But what's coming up with weather? Across the nation, we're looking at this big low right here, and that is something that we're talking about here in Grand Junction, Delta, Montrose, all the way down to Ridgway in the San Juan Mountains, and all the way up north towards Meeker. A big cold front attached to this low here, all that purple. You see that? That's that cold, that's that Arctic air. We're finally getting some more gasps of it as we move later on into the spring season. I personally am very, very happy to see that we're finally getting not only rain, but snow too. Yes, here in Grand Junction. I know, believe it or not. Granted, it's going to be on the lighter end, probably more of a dusting, and then it's going to melt throughout the day because we're warming up into the 40s after this cold front passes through. But there's a lot to be said about the cold temperatures it's going to bring overnight, hard freezes across the U.S. So let's take a look here at our little chart. Where's it going to go? See that big purple line there dragging out throughout Utah towards Salt Lake City and towards our north, near Wyoming, and then for us here in Western Colorado, it's going to chill us out a whole lot, bringing a lot of snow to the mountains. It's going to be very messy on the roads in I-70. We'll be talking about that later on in the show. And then right after that, this zone of high pressure starts to build this ridge, that orange hump. That's what that is, zone of high pressure. And what that's going to mean is warming right back up here on the west coast of the United States after that moves on through. And then that cold air, we're going to see where that's going here in a few moments. It's going to bring a lot of intense storms to the Midwest. And then right after that, you'll see that big low building off the west coast. Is that coming to us here in Western Colorado? Well, not really. At least it's going to take a while because we're actually just going to stay under that ridge for the foreseeable future next week after we get that intense weather coming up tomorrow. Keep in mind, today is the 16th. We're recording this on Thursday, the 16th of April. And what that's going to mean for us is that after you're watching this, you may have already experienced all that intense weather that we're going to be seeing tonight into tomorrow on Friday. So this is our Storm Prediction Center outlook. What does this actually mean? Well, here, let's talk about it. Right here, you're seeing on our map this dark green zones, those light green zones. The dark green is where it really starts to intensify, and then we have that slight risk. That's the yellow zone there. What's that mean? That means more intense weather. And I know that intense is kind of a meaningless term when you hear it so much because, what's intense? What's extreme? Well, the SPC chart actually has, very defined parameters. And so when you get to, say, yellow, that is our slight risk zone. And while the word is slight, it does actually typically mean you see some more extreme weather, some thunderstorms. And the main risk for this is going to be hail and also some rainfall coming up the day after in the Midwest. So we're going to take a look at our friends in Illinois. What is going to be happening next with them? Well, if you look up, they're kind of on the edge of this Storm Prediction Center map here. But we're going to look at a package coming out of, again, Illinois, covering by our sister station in Chicago, because they're already preparing for storms. Keep in mind, that's the SPC day one. The day two is much more intense. They're preparing for that low pressure system, that deep cold air that we're seeing as we move into Friday over the next couple of days, already issuing warnings, already making preparations. So we're going to take a look at what the system that we're going to be seeing is going to bring towards the Midwest in a couple of days. Let's take a look at the pack.
Well, the Weather Service is forecasting minor to moderate flooding along the Des Plaines River from the Wisconsin border south to here in Des Plaines. The Public Works Department, fire, and police are working to ensure residents are safe and that there is minimal property damage.
No, we actually are very close to the river, and we do have a bend in the river right now, so water's going to seek its level, and we are kind of in this area, even along River Road. Water levels can reach higher levels.
Skycam 9 video shows the river rising. Floodwaters have already hit parts of a nearby campground. Around 9:45 last night, the river stage was 15.2 feet. The river is expected to rise to a crest of 17 feet by Friday morning. WGN saw city officials going door to door, sending warnings to residents about potential flooding. Sandbags are available for pickup at the Public Works Department on Joseph Schwab Road. As conditions develop, Public Works may establish remote sandbag filling stations in impacted areas.
First thing we want to do is we want to stay out of the flood water. We don't want to walk in it. We don't want to drive in it. It's contaminated water, first of all, so it's unhealthy. And then if we're driving, we want to stay out of it. Even 12 inches of water, a car could get washed away.
And right now, there are no road closures, but that could change. There are expected significant delays near the Des Plaines River. Drivers are urged to stay away from that area. Here in Des Plaines, Winnie Dorch, WGN News.
All right, so that was a look at what's going on in the Midwest. So definitely an intense round of rainfall as those river levels start to rise. Maybe I wouldn't want flooding, but wouldn't be too upset if the Colorado River ran up a little bit. We're so low on that snowpack. We'll take another look at that later on. We're a little jealous, I'd say, in Colorado, of some of that Midwestern rainfall. But this is, again, our Storm Prediction Center outlook. And as we discussed, the main risk is going to be hail. Now, we saw, earlier on this week here in Grand Junction. But it's always heading over towards the Midwest, too, that big yellow zone right there. That's a slight risk of hail. That is, and again, you notice it moving around a lot, too. It's just been that means it's been updated very recently. But yeah, hail risk, again, much larger than what we're going to see here. And the interesting thing here is you can see these two little zones of humidity. Over towards the Midwest, you see that slightly drier pocket in the south. But again, all that green, you can suspect, okay, that's probably where that rainfall is going to be, all up towards the Midwest. But then over towards the west, you look at Grand Junction, all this dark red, but at the same time, just that little pocket of green in there between Junction and Billings. If you look over on the, what would you say? It's your left side of the screen. It's my left side of the screen too. But sorry. Sometimes you get really confused. I know I've worked in TV long enough to know that sometimes when you're looking at the camera, it's actually the opposite side. Like when I try to point this way, that's when I'm pointing at the screen, even though it's the left side from my angle. But the point is, I digress. It gets really confusing when the camera's flipped and you're looking right at it. Maybe it's because I'm not a pro yet, but I feel like a pro. I mean, I'm getting paid for it. I think I do a decent job at least. But yeah, you little pocket of green that's coming our direction. That's going to be that snowfall, that rain that we see overnight and into Friday morning here in western Colorado. So let's take a look at our satellite radar. Again, you get those two different zones. You get that snow already on its way towards Salt Lake City. It's going to be moving our direction here in Colorado, going to bring us that mountain snowfall and make it a little hazardous on the roads when you get into Friday morning. And then in the Midwest, you see the start of some storms that are working their way over towards the east. We'll take a look at those first. And look at that. You see that front very clearly defined right there, that line of storms, and then a big clump over towards the Missouri area and going into Illinois, Missouri and Arkansas at least, and then going over further east to Kentucky and Tennessee. So it's not really getting going right now. We're not going to have this big in-depth look at the moment at least, but you already do see those little flashing green zones. That's where your flood watches are. So again, a lot of that concern as you move around a lot of the Midwest, and then we're heading back over towards the west, towards us right here, and this is what we're looking forward to, is that snow. I know, not everywhere in the country is excited to see, more rain, but we are. We certainly are. More rain, more snow. I will take it as long as it doesn't do any damage to life or property. Certainly, I'm in for it. And it's already up towards Idaho Falls right now and heading, again, along Salt Lake Cities, where they're kind of already seeing the earlier portion of this event as it heads our direction, as this cold front gets brought down towards us in the western slope. We're really only a few hours out now. It is 4:28 p.m., so that's about... we're about 7 hours out. 7 hours out from start. I have it starting at 1 a.m. later on today. So here are our Washington mornings here in Grand Junction. This is your teaser for what's going to be happening here in a little bit. But before we talk about our local weather, we are going to take another look at another package. We're going to be looking again towards the Midwest because we've actually already seen some storm damage. In fact, Grand Junction, believe it or not, is not the only place to see a lot of hail this week. It definitely struck Ohio, where they had severe damage towards some property and some power lines because of strong winds. And winds are something we'll be talking about here in a moment, too. So I figured it'd be a nice kind of relation to see what's going on in the east and then coming back towards us in the west. So let's take a look, and then we'll go to break.
Utility crews continue to work restoring power on Old Route 8 on Thursday. Around them, trees and limbs are down, the result of a storm that residents say lasted only a few moments.
Within moments, it was like probably just a couple minutes. The trees were all down in front, and then he noticed in the back the extensive damage.
At Mark Piscura's home, massive pine trees are uprooted. Several of them, otherwise healthy, snapped as high as 20 feet from the ground.
He said this rain came, he could not see out the window. It was like a burst of rain hitting the windows, and he felt like a train. He heard like train, like that, and the house was shaking.
It had to be enormous winds. It had to be brief because it was here and gone, and just overwhelming. It was an overwhelming thing to see. I'm still overwhelmed.
I think we first started noticing it when the power went out, and that kind of led everyone to kind of start calling and asking what was happening.
From Drone Fox, you can easily see the path of the strong winds, with perhaps the greatest damage on Piscura's property. Trees somehow completely missing his home, with very little or no damage to neighboring property on all sides.
By God's grace, that's true, because it could have been completely smashed with the size of these trees. I mean, if it had gone the other way, it would have collapsed the roof for sure.
There's a few trees down over there, and nobody else around here got any damage. So it just seemed to directly hit him with the force, and then it went through the back, and then it kind of disappeared because no other trees, it just took out all his.
Fortunately, no one was injured, no one that we're aware of. I mean, the property damage, that can be repaired. The trees, unfortunately, they're beautiful trees, but we can replant them and clean them up.
Welcome back. I'm happy to be back with you. We saw before the break some very intense winds in the Midwest, and now we're going to bring it back towards us here in Western Colorado, where we're going to be looking at some intense winds that we felt today. Honestly, they were looking at in a forecast up to 50 miles per hour. I'll have to check what we've seen so far. Remember, again, today is the 16th, so you can go back in the record books for yourself, because I don't have that on hand at the moment. But for our watches and warnings, the main thing we're talking about is this freeze warning, and I'm covering up part of the graphic, but I can just tell you it's going to be Friday night into Saturday is the really big one. Again, today is Thursday the 16th. Friday is tomorrow, the 17th, overnight into the 18th on Saturday. Freeze warning, a hard freeze too. To keep that in mind, a hard freeze, what does that mean? That means the type of cold that can cause crop damage. It's the type of cold that, say, if you don't drain out your sprinkler, can end up bursting it. It's the type of cold that can harm your swamp cooler. I know you're gonna have to fill it back up again. I'm sorry about that. But you really do want to take those preparations. Tonight it will be freezing in many places, but that coldest air, again, that hard freeze that really gets people concerned, that is going to be occurring Friday night into Saturday after the cold front actually passes through the area, not as it will tonight. And you can see here all those dark blue areas, that's those freeze warnings all the way from Usson Junction up towards Quebec and along I-70 towards Battlement and Glenwood, and then all the way down through the valleys towards Delta, Olathe, Montrose, over towards Paonia and Hotchkiss. It is everywhere. There is no exception to this. Please take those precautions if you are watching this ahead of time, though I imagine a lot of you will not necessarily be, because I know these loop on the streaming service. But point is, you do want to take those proper preparations, not let this harm your pipes. Please be careful as we move into the next few days here. So let's take a look at our forecast one more time. I guess that big low right up there, it's that cold Arctic air. It's coming down. We already showed you the snow ongoing in Salt Lake City and much of the western portion of the United States and the Pacific Northwest. And yes, we did discuss those winds. This is Friday at 2 a.m. Today really is our most intense winds. Again, up to 50 miles per hour ahead of this front. Just because of the pressure contrast. But once it gets a little bit closer, it'll push away some of that warmer air. And again, our contrast will go down. Those winds, therefore, will also go down a little bit too. This is Friday at 2 a.m., still in that 30 mile per hour zone. So just because they're not 50 miles per hour doesn't mean there's no winds at all. It's still going to be very noticeable throughout the day. And this is Friday at 4 p.m. Again, those winds are going to hang on to the afternoon, but this will even be after the front is really gone for the most part in terms of that precipitation, because it's not going to be an all-day event. It's going to be mostly on Friday morning. We'll show you a visual here in a little bit. But Saturday at 5 p.m., those winds calm all the way down. We're in this big cold air mass, and we're stuck there on Saturday. So I know a little bit chilly to start your weekend off, but it's still going to be in those 50s. So you are going to be able to go outside and not, feel completely miserable all the time. But certainly it is going to be a bit cooler than what we would expect for the springtime. And we'll take a look at our drought. I always like to take a look at this every Thursday because that's when it gets updated. And you are going to see here, we are in that extreme drought zone still in Grand Junction, no changes there. And the darker red exceptional drought zone for much of the northwestern portion of the state. I'm very appreciative of the fact that Colorado is pretty much a perfect square. So it's very easy to say, oh, it's the northwest corner, that's the southeast corner, Very easy to just kind of chop it up in little parts. But here in Grand Junction, again, in that extreme drought, what is that typically indicative of? More increased fire weather concerns. Again, very much easier burns. Those larger fires tend to go in hand with an extreme drought. So we would like to get out of that before we really get into fire season. But we're already seeing thunderstorms start to pop up here and there. So we are starting to enter a period of vulnerability to that. And also, again, is typically indicative of some less productive pastures generally in Colorado, not as a great as a farming season as we would like, which isn't helped, of course, by this hard freeze coming up as we move into the weekend. Montrose is doing a lot better, only in that moderate drought zone, which isn't good, certainly. You don't want to be in a drought at all, really. But it is a dramatic improvement from what we're seeing in other portions of the state. And right now, our snowpack is at 20% statewide, 20%. What is that? That is 20% of our average. Keep that in mind. So 50% are normal, our average being 100%. My apologies. 100% of normal, right? That's just average. That's what we see year to year. And then we are at a fifth of that, less than half of what we normally see, only a fifth of our 100% typically. It's just a long way of saying we have basically no snow right now when we should really here still in Colorado because of just how dramatically warm it was towards the back half of the winter and the early part of the spring. I mean, still now we're running well above average already as we get into next week, so we're really not getting out of that drought zone. We're going to take a look at our future cast here, but we are going to see this cold front start to move into the air. Thursday at 8 p.m., and then, boom, look at that. That snow starts to arrive, and it is going to bring those very, very chilly temperatures. So before we talk about the specifics of this front and get into our weather, our very own Dalen Brazelton, our morning forecaster here, is going to have a little package about this hard freeze coming up here in western Colorado and how it affects the agricultural industry. I know that might include some of you, so maybe not everything will be a surprise, but I'm sure for many of us it's going to be very educational. So let's take a look.
Now, rain in April, that's something that we are used to out here. What is a little bit stranger is this mixed precipitation we're seeing. That snow and rain mixture, it almost looks like hail on the ground. This is the sign of a hard freeze, and it could prove disastrous for our farmers.
A cold front is moving across the western slope this Friday, and temperatures are expected to plummet as a result, and many areas could wake up to snow on the ground. Areas like Montrose could be seeing temperatures nearing 20 degrees. Typically, the freezing point of water is 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 degrees Celsius. But Colorado's atmospheric pressure is so much lower than it is at sea level that the freezing point actually sits closer to 28 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 1.9 degrees Celsius. Now, with crops like peaches in the early stages of growth, how is this incoming hard freeze affecting our local farmers on the western slope?
Actually, it's unfortunately common. And the later in April we go, the more damaging the frost is because everything is out there.
Bruce Talbot, farm manager at Talbot's Mountain Gold, tells me the incoming snow isn't actually a problem. It's when the snow leaves that the real issues begin.
We just need to stay above 29 or 30. That's where we lose the bud. And if we actually get a snow cap over that, a lot of times that's a blanket of insulation. So snow may actually help us.
Talbot goes on to explain that despite a warm winter, the peach trees have laid dormant long enough and they start growing despite the current weather. The secret to combating the incoming cold? Really big fans.
When they come out of dormancy, they come out of dormancy. We really don't have much choice. In the old days, we used to use smudge pots and propane heaters, but they're expensive, they're smoky, they're dirty. So what we use now are the fans or the wind machines, and the head on that machine rotates slowly, and we're just pulling warm air from above and blowing out the cold air that is in the orchard.
The Old Farmer's Almanac indicates that typically Grand Junction sees its last hard freeze around April 6th. But the horticulture community rarely uses the almanac anymore. Instead, evolving technology like agricultural fans allow the power to return to the farmer's hands instead of bowing to Mother Nature.
Dalen Brazelton, KREX News.
All right, well, thank you, Dalen. I hope that you learned a little bit from that. I know, snow keeping your plants warm. It's very weird to think about, but it is true. And it is from one of our very own local farmers at Talbot Farms. So thank you very much for coming on the show. This is Friday at 2 a.m. We're seeing that snowfall arrive here in western Colorado, 41 in Grand Junction. It's going to get a little bit cooler than that. And again, I think we are going to be a little cooler generally than what our model is showing us right here. I think we are going to hit freezing here in Junction tonight. But let's take a look. This is 8 a.m. You'll notice it's already kind of getting out of the valley. It's going to be a lot messier on those roads if you are at elevation. Let me tell you that. Those gusts are going to be sticking around, as we discussed, kind of that 25 to 30 mile per hour zone. When you add snowfall on top of that, and certainly locally getting a bit higher as that front is right over you, it's going to be messy, especially at pass level. You're going up to Vail Pass, going to Loveland Pass, Rabbit Ears. That's not going to be good. So personally, I would not be traveling east along I-70 as you get into Friday morning. I would wait until the afternoon. That would be my piece of advice because, again, you don't want to get stuck up in any traffic accidents here. So let's take another look at this. In 37 Delta, 30 in Montrose. And I know what you're thinking. Well, Ian, aren't those temperatures a little bit warm for snow? Yeah, they are. We're going to be right on that line. And so a lot of what falls as snow isn't currently expected to be sticking on the ground for that long. Certainly when the most intense snowfall is ongoing, when this cold front moves right through the area, you are going to see a lot more snow in there. And then it's just going to start to melt right afterwards. It's going to be very similar if you remember the snow squall from earlier on this year. It's not going to be quite that intensive, certainly. The gusts are not going to be nearly as extreme. But it is a general idea of you see all this snowfall and then within a few minutes it's gone because there's not going to be that many clouds on the back end of this either. There's going to be plenty of sunshine in the afternoon. This is Friday at 1 p.m. You're already starting to clear out. Just some scattered snow showers here and there. And with temperatures, yeah, in those 40s. I know this model is a degree or two warmer than I have it, but still I do have us in the 50s in the afternoon, mostly in the mid 40s. But maybe a place or two might get close to 50 in those upper 40s. Point is, though, it's going to just be too warm for that snow really to be sticking around. And as you move a little bit further on into your futurecast, then boom, sunshine. As you move into the evening, I really don't expect much of that snow to be sticking around in the valleys, certainly. But it may accumulate a little bit. And again, just makes things rough on the road near the time of that front moving through the area. So again, my advice to you, if you have those outdoor plans, if you're going on the roads, any big travel, just stay off of them until the morning, wait till the afternoon, and then it's going to be clear. It'll be cold, sure, maybe a little bit windy, but at Grand Junction, 35 degrees, 31 in Delta, 33 in Montrose, Sunday at 7 a.m. And then we're going to look a little bit further on to our forecast. Sunday, 3 p.m. Look at that, already back in those 70s. Ridge of high pressure starts to build up a bit more, and then we get warmer and warmer and warmer as we move later on into the week in those 50s and some clouds here and there once you get into Monday. So let's take a look at those snowfall totals. We're really just expecting a dusting. It's not going to be anything too extreme as you get through Friday morning, but certainly up in the mountains, you could see some accumulation, 48 inches up in Aspen, then less than an inch here in Grand Junction. And you see, our model doesn't even have anything in Delta. Again, there will be rainfall in there, and there isn't going to be that extreme accumulation even down towards Montrose. It will just be noticeable. You'll be like, oh my goodness, and then it's going to melt. So let's take a look at our futurecast here. Still see that rain and snow ongoing. Move a little bit on further. It's Friday at 3 a.m. Seeing that snow, we're going to keep on going. And then it's gone. Moves on over the Front Range, bringing some thunderstorms. This is Friday at 3 p.m. And then, boom, clearing out. and there's not much to talk about as you get early next week. Is that high pressure sets into the area? We're going to get a lot drier. And so we'll take it one more time, a look at our big scale future cast. What's going on in the Midwest? You see that front kind of over my head right up there. That front moves on through the area. And then ours on the West Coast brings, again, some storms towards the western portion of the United States. And you see right after that front moves on through, you see those really intense storms bigger than the Midwest. That's what our package was showing earlier. That's what they're preparing for. A lot of heavy rainfall as you move into the next few days, and then it heads on down south, starts to spread its way over towards the east. And then high pressure builds up all across the United States. So you're not really seeing that much going on as you get Monday into the afternoon. You're going to see a much drier start to the week. So here's a time lapse from earlier on this week. We talked about the hail. We talked about that intense weather. Here is some very intense weather. Look at this. There are going to be, again, a little bit going on in there. I think it's a very pretty time lapse, personally. Here in a moment, you should see that rain moving on through the area. But yeah, it was a good week of weather, I would say. At least for me, I love having something to talk about. But certainly if you're outside when that hail was coming on through and it hit you in the head, maybe not so fun, especially again down in the Redlands where you saw more than just that pea-sized hail, getting a little bit larger overall. And then, as we just move later on into the next couple of days, do keep in mind we are still going to have that hard freeze Friday night into Saturday. And what that's going to mean, again, is some unfortunate crop damage. It's going to shut down some of those seasonal plants for sure, which is good for your allergies, but, not necessarily good for the plant life in and of itself. And again, I think it's going to be a good week coming up here in Western Colorado. Again, you just got to get through tomorrow morning. So again, my advice to you, Friday morning, I wouldn't really want to be on the roads. Once you get into the afternoons, clearing out, and while those gusts might stick around, it is going to be pretty nice outside. So I do appreciate you watching this episode of Weather Eye. Again, I'm meteorologist Ian Kowalski. It's been very nice to have you with me today. We'll be covering more again on our station as that snow front moves through the air, bringing us that colder air. And then next week, again, high pressure builds right back up. Plenty of sunshine comes on the way. And if you're wondering when's the next place for that rain, I'd say it's going to be a Thursday night, Friday next week. Thanks for watching.